Our guest is the great comedian and actor Tim Allen, and it looks like you're in your garage, which,
yes.
Now, Tim, your new sitcom, Shifting Gears, takes place in a classic car restoration thing. Did you pitch the idea because of your love of great cars?
Well, actually, the pitch came up when I was doing the series Santa Claus, or the Santa Clauses for Disney Plus. And somebody said, would you think of doing another sitcom? And I thought they were kidding. I said, I'm doing a show for you right now. It'd be very difficult to do both of those. And if I did one, I would like to, I've been fascinated by people that, in a spiritual way, about how people deal with grief. So I said, I'd like to be a guy that recently in the show lost his wife. So he's alone. And I'd like to be like Jimmy Stewart was in A Wonderful Life, where I was an artist or a designer or a fabricator who, on his way to Rhode Island School of Design, his father died. He had to come back to North Hollywood and take care of his machine shop. Cut to, he's a designer, so it's nothing like I've ever played. They let me do that, and I have a car shop in North Hollywood, and it's right near a dance studio in North Hollywood, so the whole system was very much like mine, where I have two different worlds. I have a machine shop, and then next to is a dance studio, and that dynamic of being art, the visual arts and the mechanical arts, I loved all that. So I was able to pitch that. They did that original script beautifully, where it was real sad about me and my youngest child in that world came home getting divorced, in a musician from Vegas, and brought her two kids home. And she and I never got along. So it was all these conflicts. And cut to, I get to have cars in the show. I get to have Kat Dennings, who's
great,
literally become like my older daughter because she's so wonderful. And the crew and the staff, it's a dream come through for me, because I get to hang out in like my car shop. I have my car collection. We use a lot of my cars because we either have to rent them from somebody or rent them from me. And I'd much prefer them rent them from me.
My guest is the great Tim Allen, and Tim's new show is called Shifting Gears. It's what's interesting to me, because you and I are the same age. When we were growing up, a lot of the sitcoms...
Why do you keep saying that?
Oh, sorry. Tim has more hair and is significantly younger than I am. But when we grew up, the sitcoms were like Bachelor Father. Andy Griffith was a widow.
Yeah.
So many of the shows had that situation, and that's kind of gone away. Everybody was happy together and whatever. But those shows always had that element of, wait a minute, is there going to be dating? What's going to happen? Do we replace the mom?
Yeah.
And you've brought that back. And this show, as you said, is a lot more emotional. And it came out of the box with great ratings. And I think I'm correct in saying it's been renewed, and you're up and running for a while now, right?
This is our second season now, and it's as I've heard from many other people my age, or our age, as you keep saying, my kid is, do you always make a noise getting out of a chair? I said, that's after 50. Now, getting into a chair requires, and getting out of the sports cars I own, it's literally aerobic exercise. But what was your question?
I was just talking about the nature of this new program is so good because it's a little more mature. It's not as jokey, and there's that tension with Kat. And this is the perfect role for her. If you're used to her for some other stuff, this is the one. This is the one she was.
Without my starting to be bitching about it, the world now with streaming is a whole different world. It's not the world I started out with. I feel like I'm analog. The conversion from digital tapes or analog tapes to digital tapes was a big deal. And if you're aficionado, I still have vinyl, and I still have a violin wood speakers. So when you hear music, the way it first was done, there's a richness to it. Cut to now, the way they do streaming, and they cut things up, and it's no longer 22 episodes, it's 8 for some odd reason, and everything. As I have these conversations, I'm a comedian, I said, does anybody in the room know what they're doing and why we're doing this the way we're doing this? And we're linear TV's, gone. I said, really? Is that it? So now it's all, as somebody said, it's much simpler now. And I said, and I snapped, and I took a picture of my TV, and I said, this is simpler to you people. 19 little boxes with little passwords. I got to get onto this and this show. I've got to go to here. And I said, it's too bad we don't have one little unit that has a grid system where all the TV shows are on there, and you can just poke one and it'll record it and put it into a box. They said, well, that's what we're trying to do. I said, it was called DirecTV. They used to have all of this on DirecTV, and if you had a TiVo, you could record it and watch it wherever you wanted. And if you had another thing called a sling box, which I had, I could carry my DirecTV to Europe, to Mexico, wherever I went, and just click on it, and the content would come up. And I said, it was working, and then we decided to break it and then make it into a system that, to be honest with you, I don't know what this whole deal is, where you see it on ABC, which is on Wednesday nights, and then the next day it's on Hulu, and it's very difficult to explain what they're doing.
Yeah, I think Hulu's actually going away. Tim Allen is my guest. Speaking of linear, we've known you since back in the days of the comedy clubs, and you have a great act. You always have, and it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whereas many of today's comedians, they get famous for a 30-second clip that's floating around on TikTok. I know you're doing some stand-up gigs. I wrote them down here. You're going to be in Boise, Idaho, Saturday, January 10th at the Morrison Center. Then at the Bob Hope Theater in Stockton, Saturday, February 7th. Then I think you've got a couple gigs coming up in Vegas in April.
Vegas, yeah.
People could fly out to Vegas to see your show. Do you have to stand in front of a mirror and do your act? Because you're so busy doing a sitcom. Do you just remember the cool stuff, or do you have to practice in the car? What's going on with that with respect to your stand-up?
That's a very good question, because I had a nightmare about it last night, trying to remember my act, because I haven't been on the road. I've been doing this TV show, a series of events, Toy Story we're in the middle of, and I haven't had and go down to comedy clubs here in Los Angeles to get refreshed. I have what I call a bubble. My comedy act's more like the whole thing's like a bit. I begin with all the new stuff I think about, and then I have an egg that I crack all the way through my act, and it's really about timing. I've been amazed at the comics that I followed when I was a kid. Is about timing, how they pause and how they move, and how I don't know what kind of musician that would be. It reminds me of. I haven't seen a Rod Stewart in a long time, but the old classic concerts, they'd have a beginning, middle, and end. They didn't come up with new stuff. Actually, as I recall, going to see concerts with the famous players, you'd kind of hear them doing their new stuff up front. You're going, get to this stuff, Sledgehammer.
Right, sure.
And they would get to this piece of their act where they'd build it to their number one hit, then bear off a little bit, and then their best hit even after that. And that's kind of what I do in comedy. I love getting people to react the way Richard Pryor, who I got to know pretty well. He was like so good in person, and I wanted to be that, where he changed my life. I watched him at the Fox Theater in Detroit when I was just out of college. At least that's what I call it. And he changed my life about the timing and where the joke was and who he was in that. And that's kind of where I'm at. I don't have this free thinking. I don't have the time really to develop new material for every concert, although I don't really believe most comics do, or musicians. They just don't do that. So I said my thing is more of an egg that I crack right in the middle of my stage show, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I actually wrote down a couple of questions. One of them was, do you ever do your Stairway to Heaven bit, which is, by that I mean, you emerged in the beginning with your great Tool segment, and we've talked about it before, how you just, that was the real you talking, and that's such a classic. I remember talking to Gaffigan going, do you have to do some of your stuff at the end of your show? And he goes, yeah, but they want the new stuff, but I really kind of have to do the Hot Pocket stuff because it's my Stairway to Heaven.
That's precisely it. I make an element in my show about the grunt, if you will, about how I became something in 5 o'clock funnies in Los Angeles. They put me on that radio show, Michelini show, and I had a hook. As Bob Seger, who was a friend of mine, used to see me as a young comedian in Detroit, and he just was fascinated, at least by my memory of stand-up. And I said, how does that, he says, you're all by yourself, And I said, Bob, you're doing, how do you do music? I find it astounding that you write music. And he was fascinated by the beats of comedy. And I said, that grunt, as he said, you put butts in the seats, you own it. And that started with me when I finally got a hook. The guy that talks about lawnmowers and barks. Yeah. Whatever they said, instead of 50 people calling into KLOS for Michelini's show, we got like 1,500 immediately, then 2,000, and then they wanted, everybody remembered this kid that talked about lawnmowers. It wasn't death or life or whatever it is. It's stupid stuff like raking leaves and how we rake and how we mow the certain things. And I related, and that grunting became part of Home Improvement. That whole show was built on, again, a pitch. They pitched me Turner and Hooch. They wanted me to do that. I said, what's that? That's already been done, with my buddy Hanks. And I said, I'm not going to do a TV show based on somebody else's stuff. Let's just come up with a new show. And then I pitched that show, a guy that breaks things instead of fixes things on this old house. That was the whole idea. And a neighbor you never see. And 3 boys instead of 2, the Hollywood 2 girls and a boy or whatever. And that bark became part, in a nasty part of me goes, they own that. Because I wasn't part of the Writers Guild, and the way they work it, whoever wrote that bark down, they wrote it. And I said, well, you kind of wrote it based on what I said. This has been a weird thing I've had. Comics, we don't have a union. And there's no protection of what we say and what we do. It's kind of a weird thing. And also, truth be told, I think comics borrow from other comics a lot more. I mean, it's hard not to be an observational comic and watch another comic do something and go, hey, that's funny. I'm gonna do that too. I often thought it'd be kind of a funny, sarcastic bit if you went up on stage and started, okay, tonight's show, I'm going to do a little Jim Gaffigan. I'm going to follow up a little bit of Jerry Seinfeld, and I'm going to end up tonight with a Richard Pryor thing. Welcome. And why would not be okay for a comic to do other comics bits?
Well, back in the day, there was a guy out of Jackson, Michigan, that would do that. He would steal everybody's material. I don't know if you remember him. He's passed away. I guess I'll let him rest in peace. But he ended his show. He wore a cowboy hat. I mean, do you know who I'm talking about? At the end of his set, he'd go, yeah, well, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I just took the best of all my friends' bits. Once again, we're speaking with Tim Allen. I don't want to take any more of your time, Tim, but I just had a real couple quick questions. You mentioned vinyl records. When you and I were coming up, you significantly more years after me, was there an album? I know in my case it was the pre-stained Bill Cosby, great stuff, Why Is There Air? And then Carlin, Robert Klein, Firesign Theater. I loved Child of the 50s. Did you have a couple of records you played 10,000 times as you got your love of doing stand-up and getting the courage?
And you know what? That was never my thing, to listen to comedy. I like Bob Newhart. I liked everybody on Carson. That's my whole focus. I love comics sitting there with Carson doing that, especially when they sat across from him. I just out of nowhere was thinking, he's talking about albums, it was music that was my thing. And I said that I still have Full House from the Jay Giles Band, and I was the promoter at my college, and I went down to see them at the Cinderella Ballroom because somebody said you should go see Dr. Hook, and the Medicine Show was up front. The audience was booing him off the stage.
Wow.
Jay Giles Band came, they shot the platinum album, the Cinderella Ballroom, Full House, at the Cinderella Ballroom. I was there that night. I've never had an experience like that where all of a sudden the concert was over, everybody's drenched in sweat, and I went, what the hell just happened? That was the most electric rock and roll, whatever Jay Giles Band is doing, and I still have Full House posters everywhere, and I'm still a huge fan, but comedy was not I never listened to comedy albums.
Really? That's interesting. Yeah, Peter Wolf's got a book out I read last year. It's very artsy-fartsy. He almost never...
He just did Jordan Klepper is my cousin, her son, and Peter Wolf went and did his podcast or something, but my cousin sent me a picture of him holding that album, and I go, send it to me. Why did he come to my cousin's husband and my cousin's, I don't know what they call it, second cousin or second nephew, but Jordan Klepper, that whole family got real tight with Peter Wolf, and I said, "Look, what a freaking album!" Anyway.
Yeah, Blow Your Face Out isn't bad either. All those Jay Giles Band albums are great.
I just don't know what I still don't know, but for that guy dances better than anybody ever. He's a Michael Jackson dancer, or probably can't move now, but as at the time.
He's still moving around. He was in here not too long ago. He's the best. Our guest is Tim Allen, and I know Mr. Allen has a lot to do. I did want to mention once again the live shows. You get to see him crack the egg at the Morrison Center in Boise Saturday, January 10th.
Yep.
And then Saturday, February 7th at the Bob Hope Theater in Stockton. And then you are going to be in Vegas, I want to say mid-April.
Mid-April at the MGM. We're working. I just got down. I don't know the nights right now because we're just working it out. But I'll be back in Vegas.
I want to say one last thing. I saw Tim back in the days. It might have been pre-Grunt, Tim Allen. And a lot of guys were getting up there in Hawaiian shirts and looking kind of sloppy. Mr. Allen got on stage in a beautiful suit. And I can remember, I've only seen 3 or 4 legit standing ovations at comedy clubs. At the end of Tim's set, the fans rocketed out of their seats. I mean, they leapt. The other guy I saw that with was the late, great Dennis Wolfberg.
Yes.
People saw something and they went, I have never seen this before. And that's how Dennis was, and that's how Tim Allen was and is. And I guess I should ask, if it's okay if I ask about Toy Story 5, is that all top secret?
It's hat. We are, believe it or not, tomorrow I'm doing another 5-hour session. Hanks and I'm going to go see Tom in New York this week for see a show in New York, and he and I talked. He said it's brilliant. He's doing his side of it. It's very different that they came up with a idea because they get all this crap like, why are they doing it just to make money? And of course it is to make money. However, if they hadn't come up with a cool story, they wouldn't have done it. And it's all about Jessie. She's troubled and has to gather the toys up. And people don't play with toys anymore because kids are on their screens. That's kind of the overview. Some of the funniest stuff in there. I never know if they use my ad-libs or not, but there's a B story where there's a whole bunch of Buzz toys that got lost in a plane went down. So there's about 100 Buzz toys everywhere that got lost. And so there's 100 of me in a B story that are all talking to each other. That's pretty darn funny.
Yeah, those movies
it's very, very inventive.
Those movies are absolutely brilliant. They are wonderful. My favorite movie of all time, Toy Story 2. But the rest of them are also very good, Mr. Allen. Hey, Tim, it's great seeing you again. Thanks for your time. Anytime, you're more than welcome to call and waste half an hour with me.
As we grow old together, because we're the same age, as you keep saying.
Okay, but that's a lie. You're much younger and much more handsome with a lot more hair. Thank you, Tim. Great pleasure. Thanks, you, sir. Man. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.